warmer outside than inside, so I just leave the door open. Is that okay? Yeah. It's really cold. Look at Jason over there. It's really cold. Good. Ways of how you can scale Agile. Like there are a lot of frameworks out there, a lot of ideas out there, and there's much more than SAFe. Much more. So, last year I visited the Agile conference in the US, and I was overwhelmed by how safe everything was there. Like a lot. If you visited a booth or something, you probably had a new license with you, like for doing SAFe or something. Yeah. So it was scary actually. There were a lot of talks about SAFe, but there was not much else. And well, I started actually to learn more about SAFe. I'm actually what is it? SCP? What is that certificate? What is it? SPC. You are there too, right? SCP? Yeah. So we did that together, right? So SCP it's a scaled what is it? Certified scaling programmer consultant. I don't know. Yeah, I am that. So I spent 4 days in a classroom and actually I learned that stuff. I read books about it. I read lots of articles. And well, let's speak others for SAFe at the moment. What I actually learned there. So one thing, for example, Ken Schwaber, one of the founders of Scrum, he said, well, he wrote an article here, like a blog post, which is unsafe at any speed. And he said, a core premise of Agile is that the people doing the work are the people who can best figure out how to do it. The job of management is to do anything to help them to do so, not suffocate them with SAFe. And that is a nice way how we put it. Okay? So, now, here are other ways. David Anderson, that's the guy behind Kanban, like software Kanban, you heard about that? Yeah? This approach fits right in with the requirements in CMMI Maturity Level 3 for process tailoring. It could be straight out of a 1990s textbook on process engineering. If you don't know that, it's a bad thing, what he said, yeah? A really bad thing. So, Neil Killick, you probably know him. He's a local guy here, Melbourne, Agile coach, and he said, I've just watched a presentation that's made me so angry, it's prompted me to write my first blog post in ages. I'm not a fan of the Scale Agile framework, to say the least. Yuck, yuck, yuck. Okay? Chris Metz, and I imagine that's how he looked like when he wrote that post. He wrote a post about Agile, and he basically said, someone just shot the Agile brand in the back of the head. And he meant SAFe with that. Oh, it gets worse. Dave Snowden, he wrote an article. The article itself, the blog post itself, is titled SAFe, the infantilism of management. He said, put brutally, SAFe seemed to be Prince 2 camouflage in Agile language. SAFe is not only a betrayal of the promise offered by Agile, but is a massive retrograde step, giving the managerial class an excuse to avoid any significant change. That's a big kick in the butt, I would say. Can you turn that off? Thank you. Okay. Mike Cohn made a like, how's it, April's Fool's joke? Yeah, so he came up with Laughable, the large Agile framework appropriate for big lumbering enterprises. If you Google that, you come to that page, which actually shows it. He calls it a choo-choo train, yeah, not an Agile release train. And of course, it's broken after it's done here. Okay, so it's funny, like lots of jokes in between. So he put it in a funny way. So. Then we have Peter Hundermark. He was not so kind with his words. He said, SAFe contains a lot of process voodoo that will not be required in most cases. Confusingly complicated framework. SAFe heightens the risk of just applying lipstick to the pig and not dealing with the fundamental changes that are required in every organization. Wow, 2 kicks in the butt, I would say. Okay. So, and Martin Fowler, he put the following thing. He said SAFe stands for Shitty Agile for Enterprises. He said that at a keynote with 800 people here in Australia. Wow. That was, I had to retweet that. To tweet that, and it was retweeted a couple of times ago. Like a couple of times. And that actually, all of that made me think like, okay, so we're complaining all the time about SAFe. And I start to complaining about SAFe. I have a lot of criticism about SAFe. But as long as there is nothing better than SAFe, not something else, why take people the cane that they're walking with? Like that's almost like chucking it away, right? So walk, Yeah, do it. And they're like, oh, I can't. Yeah. So, and I don't want to do that. Okay. What I want to do that is want to give them alternatives. That's where I came up with the idea of, well, if they're safe, there might be other things. So let's explore them and actually let's have an overview of that. And that's how I actually came to that idea of this session, basically. Does that make sense so far? Yeah. Okay. So I created something like that. I know it's the worst slide ever. Okay, so I just wanted to show you what I did here. What I did is I created a so-called wanted poster. Yeah, so if I wanted a scaled agile framework, something like that, so how would it look like? What are the basics? Yeah, put it on a poster. I needed 3 posters for that. Yeah, so but still, so I did that for SAFe, just to have a comparison, starting thing. That is the disciplined agility delivery framework. So that is called DAT. So they are only the acronyms, okay? So there is the evidence-based management, that one over here. So there is the, and I forgot what it actually stands for. The Enterprise Transition Framework of Agile. So large-scale Scrum. Yeah, that's what LESS stands for here. That I thought about that on my own. It's actually scaling agile at Spotify. Isn't that cool? SaaS hasn't been there before. So scaled is actually a recursive acronym. I had to look that up. It stands for Scaled Agile Lean Development. So scaled stands for Scaled Agile Lean Development. Do you get that? It's complicated. Okay. So that's scaled, that part here, and then actually Don Reinertsen has a lot to say in terms of principles about scaling. Like in general. So for example, when to centralize, when to decentralize, and so on. How to work with queues, and so on. Those are very interesting topics when it comes to scaling. So why not give it a shot and put that as an alternative to that? So I did that too. And then I came up with, the book is actually Product Development Flow by Reinertsen, Don Reinertsen. So PDF by R. That makes sense? Okay, good. Just to have it neatly with all the acronyms. Okay? So. I don't have time in this half hour to actually go through all of that. Okay, obviously, it's really a lot. But on the slides you actually can follow along, and there are links to further things. So if you want to have a nice overview, that's it basically. I encourage you to read the slides later. But right now I want to jump into at least one of those frameworks. Maybe we can do 2. Which one of those do you want to jump into? Spotify? Okay, Spotify 1. Another one? PDF by R. PDF by R. We can do PDF by R. That's okay. So who's for Spotify? PDF by R? Okay, who wants to see something else? Nah, okay, good. Let's do Spotify. Okay, wait a sec. There it is. There we are. So what I put in, that's basically the pattern where I created here. What is it? The idea behind it, the people behind this, and the main book article. That's only the first part, right? So what is it actually? They say, and it's their words, it's one of the most impressive examples for dealing with multiple teams in a product development organization, and that is Spotify. That's what they say. And they said that not because they're very arrogant, that's what the feedback was when they actually told others about their approach. Main emphasis is on examples. So that's actually the total opposite of SAFe, where SAFe says, well, basically I have a big picture here, so you should all follow along that big picture. Basically that's what they say. Yeah. So well, they say, no, we actually found out for ourselves how we can actually deal with that, and this is just one example. That's us. That's not artificial. Yeah, that's just us. Don't copy that, by the way. That's what they say. Okay, make up your own mind, but just treat it as one way to do it. Okay? And I find that very, very inspiring. So the idea here is they want to provide autonomy, mastery, and purpose, and that, according to them, results in high performance teams. Okay? So that's basically their idea here. So there are a lot of people behind that, and I put actually in here all of Spotify's employees because they all created that. They put a huge emphasis, and when I say they, the speakers for that approach are mainly Henrik Nieberg, Anders Iversen, and Joachim Sunden. And They're all on at Spotify. That's why it's called Scaling Agile at Spotify. Spotify, do I have to explain what that is? Anyone? Not? Very cool. Okay, awesome. So that's what they do at Spotify. If you want to read something about it, the very first approach to that is Scaling Agile at Spotify by Henning Niebeck and Anders Albertson. It's a PDF, it's only 14 pages. It's a rough overview of what they're doing to get you an idea on what they actually do. So, the next part of the wanted poster is actually the roles I put in the home. Usually that's like the home URL. They don't have one. They're not advertising it at all. Yeah. So and the key aspects. So let's focus on the roles. There are dedicated product owners per squad. A squad is basically a team, a feature team, so to say. Okay, not a functional team, mind you. So there's agile coaching as needed. There is an agile coach pool, so to say. Yeah. So in every squad, if they need one coach, sometimes they need two coaches. Yeah. So they require those coaches, and they work for a longer time with that team there. But some teams are actually it's not mandatory to have coaching there. Okay. So and there are stable feature teams, and there are chapter leads. A chapter is basically a special interest group, yeah. So and they want to encourage mastery. So if you want to become really good at, for example, web programming or something, yeah. So you create a chapter. Everyone can create a chapter. So every chapter should have a chapter lead, and that chapter lead should have a vision about how can we actually achieve or can be better at what we're doing right now. So they have something like that, and they are so-called tribes. Tribes are like a number of squads. Spotify has over 40 of these squads at the moment, and they're actually distributed in 3 cities. So that's a huge thing, I would say. It's not enterprisey like I don't know, Australian Post or Telstra or something like that. Yeah. So, but 40 is significant, I would say, right? So, now those 40 teams, they're because 40 is a huge number. They wanted to have smaller numbers, like the Dunbar number, the social interactions we actually can maintain. Yeah. So Dunbar said it's between 50 and 150, roughly. So they say a tribe is 20 to 100 people. Okay. So those are and those tribes have tribe leads. So some of the key aspects I already mentioned. One thing, the very first here is Scrum and Kanban and XP and hybrids are at a team level, and every team level is free to choose. That's what find most people very astonishing, especially when you're like program manager and upwards. They're like, what? They are able to choose, they are allowed to choose. How can they? Yeah, so they're not okay with that because it's against their idea of having a standard. Yeah, either we're all doing Kanban or we're all doing Scrum. Yeah, so or whatever we do in between, but we should have a standard. No. Spotify says no. They're free to choose, but they should have interfaces. So, for example, or constraints. Let's put it that way. One constraint is you have to release regularly. Right? If you don't release regularly, we don't need leave it up to you what you actually want to do. But if you actually release regularly, yeah, so that's only one constraint. Yeah, so, but if you do that, then it's up to you how you actually do that. Okay, that's the idea of individuals and interactions of our process and tools, Agile Manifesto. Yeah, so it's pretty good. I find it pretty good. The squads are more or less autonomous, meaning whatever they think is needed to actually get the job done. And that's actually what they want, get the job done. So whatever is needed, they can do that. Autonomy. Yeah. So, the special interest group called chapters, I already mentioned that. The stripes I mentioned, and they have measurable quarterly goals for the squads. Meaning they provide some kind of, it's more like a vision, I would say, because the goals are very broad. Yeah. So, but it's actually something the team can strive for, the squad can strive for, which actually encourages a lot of mastery as well. Okay. That's actually Scaling Agile at Spotify. I have another slide, which is empty more or less. So those are some diagrams. So I always picked for every one of these approaches, I picked some diagrams here. So, and I had a look, like for example, you see here, that is a tribe, those are the squads. Between all those squads, and sometimes it's like across a lot of them are chapters. So guilds are communities of practice. So if you want to become better at, for example, I don't know, creating native, I don't know what. Yeah. So I don't know. Yeah. So if you want to do that, so find someone else who's interested in that. Yeah. You could have a community of practice, like a guild when it comes to scaling agile, if you want to, right? You can do that. So they can do that. So that's actually basically where they are set. And you see how like they're actually not very much aligned. So the chapters here are actually more aligned. Like the idea is here, so all product owners are in one chapter, which is the product owner chapter, basically. Yeah. So, but it's not as neatly as here. What they basically say is whenever we publish something, like whenever Spotify publishes something, it's already old. Like we have moved on from there. Okay? So don't treat that as some recipe, please don't. Yeah. So, big projects, they have also like a sequence of what they do. If you compare that sequence, if you would draw the same sequence for save, I couldn't fit it in the whole slide deck here. So that's a very simple approach, and it's nothing left out. That's at least what they tell the world. Yeah. So that's very accurate. That's what they're saying. So that's one approach. Do you get the idea what I did with the wanted posters? Yeah? Then I would like to show you actually wait a sec, where are we? Actually we can do one more. What's the time? I'm confused. There's the time. 15 minutes, we started at 1:10. We can do one more. Do you want to know the Reinhardt and stuff? Is that? Okay, cool. Let's have a look here. So that's actually, people behind this, it's Don Reinhardtson. He wrote a book basically, and if you ask, let's put it differently. I never met an Agile coach who said this is not good. Most of the Agile coaches say, wow, I only read it 2 times. I know, I should do better. Okay? So it's that good. That book is actually so demanding that you have to study it. It's not something you can read easily. At least I can't do that, right? So I'm going through that book chapter by chapter, and one chapter basically takes me like a week to actually work with that, with all the concepts, what are the implications, and looking up all its references. So it's a very good book. The book is called Product Development Flow by Don Reinhardtson here. So, and the idea, he calls it's a new paradigm. And I would agree, it's a new way of looking at things. And the great thing is he did a lot of research, a lot of math, a lot of science behind that. So he explains it in a very good way. Once you actually figure that out, you're like, wow, it's almost like looking like a chess player, like a really good grandmaster chess player, like how he actually develops his moves. And you're like, wow, okay, now I know, like 8 moves further, I know why you did that. Yeah, so it's like that. Okay. So the idea is, his words, the dominant paradigm for managing product development is as wrong as we were in manufacturing before the Japanese unlocked the secret of lean manufacturing. You know that Toyota stuff, Toyota production system? Yeah. So I believe that a new paradigm is emerging one that challenges the current orthodoxy of product development. So that's the idea behind that. So what he actually put is, well, no roles at all, because that's just not his point. His point is, I talk to you in principles. So these principles are, the major themes are economics, queues, variability, batch size, VIP constraints, cadence and synchronization and flow control, fast feedback and decentralized control. Within all of these major themes, he put several principles, and all of these principles are like, wow. They're really heavy to digest, but you can work a lot with them once you actually get behind that. That's a lot of work. That's not like you have a big picture where you actually know, okay, now I'm here, where I have to go? Oh, turn left, okay. That's not like it. The principles are actually very difficult to digest, but once you have that, you have a very good basis for actually making good decisions within your organization. That's the idea. I would say this can't be further from the SAFe approach at the moment. I don't know anything that is further apart from that. Like if it were a scale, SAFe on one side, that would be on the other side. Go for it.
Believe me, I'll rewrite his book after reading
this. He refers a lot to that, yes, I know that. Still, it doesn't come across. Not from what I like. When I see what he actually put out there, like the slide deck for the class, for example, 200 plus slides, 10 of them about that. The rest about, yeah. So for me it's unbalanced. Okay, but yes, it's actually good nowadays if you want to do something new to quote Reinhardt. You almost can't do anything wrong with it.
Skyline. Like how do you deploy it at scale?
The thing with the principles is, it actually starts with one team, right? With one team, we're not speaking of scaling. I would say we start speaking of scaling once we are actually at 2 teams. When we are 2 teams, for example, the decentralized control you mentioned here. Once you understood the principles about like when, what to decentralize and when, what to have centralized. So that's actually a very powerful way to actually making decisions. What happens when you scale? Therefore, this is very helpful if you want to scale. Does that make sense?
I suppose what I was asking for, how do you scale the knowledge to the point where the organisation, the large enterprise understands Ryan Hudson to the point where they can actually use it?
Good question. And I don't think the answer is that. Does that make sense? Everyone who reads that? Jason?
So I would say, especially if you're thinking about something like decentralized control, which would be derived from legal warfare, mission command, and that sort of stuff, which is talking about scale, because they're talking about the Marine Corps, or talking about the military. It would be the same thing. I don't necessarily require every team to understand the principle about how I'm organizing everything, but there are certain things I would do to allow. They'll talk about I need alignment to allow autonomy or enable autonomy, whatever. I can do that without the teams understanding that principle. But if I make it clear what the intent is, they can have autonomy. They'll know what to do. So I don't necessarily need to spread that leadership knowledge. I just need to have enough of it. Over time, obviously, you do need, because you need to replace the managers, so on and so forth. But
that makes sense? I would agree with what Jason said. Yeah.
Some of the other stuff are a little bit more difficult.
But you see, it's not so tangible as, for example, like the safe. I know I have to do that step. So, and then I might be safe. I don't know. If it works in your organization, okay. In a lot of organizations, it doesn't work like with that blueprint, right? So that's the idea here. So, in terms of diagrams, sorry, with principles, no diagram, right? So, and there are some diagrams in that book, but the main message here is there is no big picture. Once you understand the principles, you have to inspect and adapt with what you have right now and apply the principles to what you have right now to do the next step. And that will lead you to the next step. That makes sense? Okay, good. Now, the whole talk here is about comparisons. So I did some comparisons. So one comparison, they look like that. One comparison is blueprint versus principles, I call it. So the question is, where is the scaling approach focused? On a scale from 0, very much blueprint and specs, to 10, all about principles. That makes sense? Like I said, I talked to you about that scale. Yeah. So you have all the frameworks here, all the ideas, the approaches. Let's call them approaches. So safe. I would say they're pretty much on a 0, like in terms of blueprints and specs. I don't know anything that comes even close to that at the moment. Well, that's not true. That as well. Like the discipline agile delivery here comes close to that as well. Yeah, in terms of the big picture. So, whereas the scale approach, the PDF by R approach, the Reinhardsen approach, actually consists only of principles, therefore very high level. Does that make sense? That kind of comparison? Yeah? Yeah. Go for it, Steve.
Without being a safe zealot,
go for it.
All Reinhardsen's principles are integrated all the way through safe, and it's the thing to remember is it's not a methodology. It's a set of principles and practices to put in where it's needed rather than.
And it's understanding those principles and practices and applying it to your context. It's not following a recipe.
Yes, I heard that. And I can't help, but that's my view how I see SAFe. I see SAFe as the big picture. That's what's very, very in front of me. I see a lot of explanations with SAFe where it says exactly how a two-day meeting should follow. Like exactly on the minute. Like those 10 minutes for that, then 50 minutes of that, then we have half an hour of break, then we have and so on. That's for me a specific thing. That's not following a principle.
But your dentist tells you to clean his teeth in 2 minutes. Do you do that?
Why do you tell me that if I shouldn't do that? Why is SAFe
It's
so
a framework. It's
on
a
that?
concept, right?
No, I don't agree. Not at all.
That's why it's called framework.
Yes, and for a framework, it's much too specific.
A
think Bruce Lee sums it up best when he says,
Me, what, my friend? What comes now?
I think Bruce Lee sums it up best. I think if you want to argue with him, you'd have to call Brandon, who is also there, I think. But absorb what is useful, reject what is useless, and add what is essentially your own.
Yes,
so
yes.
Across all of these frameworks, you take what is relevant.
No, no, and I wouldn't agree. For example, less is very specific about, no. That is actually what you need, and only what you need, and you shouldn't let go of that. That's different. I heard that a lot with SAFe. Take what you need, okay? But then again, I mean, it's a mashup of all these different methods. Well, why don't I just take what I need? Why do I need that framework for that? Why do I put it like with that big picture? Why put that together in that way? Doesn't add up for me. Okay, but it's okay. It's okay. My opinion. Okay, all good? Yeah, still friends? Yeah? Maybe not. Okay. The next thing, commercialization. Like how much is it pushed into the market? There was a lot of bad criticism about how things are approached here. So, for example, on that side here, like the scale, like I said, they only put it out there to have feedback. They don't want to buy you something. They don't put up a certification program. They what? They started?
No, that slide, I agree with.
Okay, thanks.
Probably trying to
Now with SAFe and also with that, both of them are pushed into the market, but heavily. Like really heavy. Every tool vendor at the moment has something to say about SAFe, like some product at the moment regarding SAFe, and that is just not like SAFe is better with marketing. And some other coach had the opinion, not me, but I agree that actually that is actually not so into criticism as SAFe, because SAFe is taking all the bullets at the moment. Yeah, because it's so prominent. That's the only reason. Yeah, so, but they're like heavily on certifications, on programs. They say basically when you do that, SAFe in a big enterprise, everyone has to be trained and so on. So pushing a lot into the market. And I'm not saying don't make money out of what you do. I take money for my work. Okay, that's not the point. The point is how much is it pushed into the market and how much is there actually need in that market. Does that make sense? Go for it.
Scrum on this slide.
Sorry?
Where's Scrum on this slide?
Scrum is not for scaling. You can say so, but less. It's the large scale Scrum. Yeah. So and actually, yes, I would say they're actually not so much into that. Yes, they're actually put that out there, Scrum Align, but there are no classes. There is no fee you have to get when you actually want to use material and so on. So therefore, yeah. But it's only an 8. Okay. It's not as Spotify. Okay. So that makes sense. Yeah. There's not even a website when it comes to less. There's one wiki page in Craig Laman's like wiki, so that's it, right? So that doesn't feel at least so commercialized. By the way, that's my opinion, right? Yeah. Okay. Good. Commercializing. I have 2 more. So the actual scaling. Scaling means, like the question here is, how does its scaling approach actually handle scaling? That means in a linear transformation that enlarges objects, like the geometric definition of scaling. So on a scale from 0 does not scale, meaning works only with super big organizations, not ops, organizations, sorry, to 10 does scale, and that means works with small organizations or very small organizations. So I would say SAFe and that are not applicable to small organizations. If you do that, Steve. That's awesome.
In the last 3 months, we've applied a SAFe framework, I use the word loosely, to 3 different teams. And they only had about 10 people per team, 30-person organisation, applying the basic concepts and principles of SAFe.
Scrum? Yeah. Is that
no, because they're planning it all. They've got the mid-layer program level, they've got the portfolio level, and they got the team.
SAFe has more roles than 30 people can actually handle. How do you do that?
Because you're looking at the theory rather than the practice.
Of course I'm looking at the theory. Those are theoretical frameworks at the moment.
But if we went back to the original Scrum theory, you got a 4-week delivery cycle back. That's it.
No, the official terminology is 2 to 4 weeks with the emphasis on the smaller cycles.
Originally it was 30 days.
I don't think we can take a copy of that one. So let me continue, please. Safe and dead. I would say not scalable. So I'm not sure with these two ones. Well, they seem to be not as heavyweight, but the emphasis, I think they're targeting still larger organizations. So that's just when I read about them, like what do they actually target? They're actually very new on the market, so it's actually hard to say at the moment. All the other ones are actually would work like right from the beginning. So that would work with two teams basically. Once you have two teams, you can work with them. So last comparison. My recommendation. Is that a surprise right now? Is it? Not really. Yeah. So I actually, Steve, that's my I'm reaching out to you here. I'm not totally convinced that Safe doesn't give any value. To the
I'm surprised you got that at once.
That's, what was the reason for that? Oh yes, just because at the moment Safe is very popular, so it's actually the value in there is having these kind of discussions. I couldn't lure you in without actually mentioning Safe, right? I guess so. I don't know. Yeah, so that is actually some value. In organizations where I work at the moment, where they do Safe, I have a lot of healthy discussions about what is good and what is bad. And I don't want to convince someone that Safe is not so good, yeah, but I want to have those healthy discussions. That's actually something Safe brought. That, nah, not so much. That's why only one. That makes sense? Yeah? So, well, I would go with that side over here rather than with that side whenever I recommend something, even for large organizations. That's my personal recommendation. One last thing here. Don't scale is an option. Very often the number one option for people looking at scaling approaches is not taken, and that is one approach. Like even if you just start with something, you don't have to look at Safe. There are a lot of things that you actually can't do, can't scale at the very beginning, which are very essential when you only have 1 or 2 or 3 teams. Okay? So please check out the Do Things That Don't Scale by Paul Graham. He actually wrote a very, very great article about that. He put it's in a lean startup context, but it's actually very valuable in terms of you might not actually talk about scaling right now, right at the beginning. Okay? Okay, thank you very much.